So you don't charm the devil with your rock and roll, Lord knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil finds his groove in them rhythm and blues that sound. It's gonna get you sun in the air.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. I am Greg Benson, flying solo today, the day after we were liberated from Liberation Day. The president of the United States has backed down on a lot of tariffs that he said there was no way in hell, no way on God's green goodness that he was going to back down from. Well, he did. And I would actually like to read a prepared statement about that. Bok, 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 bok. Bok, bok, bok. Now, obviously, I'm being silly, but there is real, genuine economic harm being done to our industry by this seemingly incoherent trade policy, namely to the American whiskey industry. American whiskey is a major export for this country, and this trade war, which seems to have been started for no reason and now paused for equally no reason, is hurting big and small producers alike. Small producers, a lot of them grow their grains locally, whether we're talking barley or rye or corn, but a lot of them rely on the Canadian export market. Canada buys a huge amount of our whiskey, and these small organizations simply can't afford to absorb the hit that losing that market would cause. Conversely, you have your larger players, the names of which I don't need to say into a live microphone because everyone knows who they are. They could probably stand to take a little bit more economic heat, but there's no way in hell that they can grow all of the grains that they need here in this country to make the amount of whiskey that they're used to making. So they have to import some of it, which again becomes a problem if you're trying to get every single thing grown here in the United States of America. Look, there are some things that we as a country are great at making, like bourbon and opinions, and there are some things in this country that we are not good at making, like green chartreuse. Now, for years, we've been talking on this show about not buying into the chartreuse shortage hype. We have been saying that it is a bank run. We have been saying that the scarcity is caused by people who hear there's a scarcity and go out and buy a whole bunch and put 7 or 8 bottles in their basement and create the very problem that they're trying to avoid. We've been saying that, and I have been urging people to resist buying into this. But I have to admit that this weekend I went to my local liquor store and I bought 2 bottles of green chartreuse and 2 bottles of yellow chartreuse because I was pretty sure they were going to be $300 a pop the next time I went in, and I didn't want to pay that much. And I didn't want to live without green chartreuse because really, who does? So while I know that you're not supposed to buy high and sell low, I bought high so I could get low. Anyway, speaking of amazing products that are made outside the borders of the United States of America, we have the face of Ilegal Mezcal here with us today, Gilbert Marquez. Gilbert, thank you so much for coming on the show today, man.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really excited to be on and excited to talk a little bit about Mezcal. Yeah, we're out here pumping away. This industry has seen its ups and downs, obviously. But one thing that I think is pretty obvious is Mezcal still is on a strong, sort of steady climb. Almost everybody has Mezcal in their menu.
I know. It's one of these, every year in the summertime, we talk about what is going to be the new Mezcal of this year. It's going to be the summer of sherry. I can feel it. I've been saying it for the last 6 years, but 2025 really is going to be the summer of sherry. Invest now, everyone. But yeah, it's one of these things that I wonder about this. I go back and forth on this in my own head, and I'd love to get your take on it. Is it just that Mezcal hit sort of the perfect moment where cocktails were really becoming big, and it was adjacent enough to a popular ingredient that people already knew to be relatively familiar, but different enough from that to be relatively exciting? And it hit at a time when people had a lot of disposable income. Did it come into a situation where everything went exactly right for it, which is why we haven't seen the next mezcal pop up in the last decade? Or is there something specific to that spirit that is just fundamentally unreplicable? I love agave, as anyone who listens to this show knows. And I wonder about this question constantly, and I don't have a good answer. And I'm wondering if you do.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The first portion, it was the perfect storm of people being more interested in what they're consuming, and us as people who were talking about the spirit category, talking about the maestro mezcaleros, the process, educating people. Something a lot of liquor or a lot of spirits, spirit categories try to do. I think Mezcal did it really well in education, because so many people wanted to know what they were drinking and what they were consuming. It was sort of the perfect storm. But Mezcal is incredibly diverse. It is the most diverse spirit in the world, in my opinion. It is so beautifully imperfect and so different from maker to maker. They can one mezcalero can literally use the same ingredients from the same region and overall the same process, but the hands of the maker changes the final flavor profile, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. There is a because it is a spirit that comes from such a specific part of the world and yet has so much variance in it. There is an etherealness and a uniqueness to each bottle that feels very sexy to me. That sounds like kind of what you're saying as well.
Yeah, exactly. You can you can just get basically anything that you're looking for. If you want something that's more sweet, something that's more herbaceous, something a little bit more of a mineral flavor, something very mixable, something that you want to only sip neat, you got all of that with mezcal.
Well, let's talk about your history with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, oh yeah. Actually, you know what? No. We've opened this Pandora's box. Let's fully revel in what we've unleashed here. Smokey, thoughts?
I think that mezcal, the smoke level is not a virtue of mezcal. I think it is definitely part of the process. It's something that should be present or is present most of the times when you're tasting a mezcal, because that is the process. You're tasting the process. But I don't think that mezcal should or has to be very, very smoky. In fact, Ilegal, I would argue, is one of the lesser smoky mezcals out there. And most of the mezcal that I've ever tasted, when I go out to Oaxaca and taste, more often than not, I like to stop in small distilleries and talk to the mezcalero, and a really large portion of the stuff that I taste is not that smoky at all.
Well,
but maybe that's my palate, though. Maybe my palate is saying that it's not smoky at all, and I'm used to.
Well, no, I completely agree. And I think there's been this interesting evolution with not only the flavors consumers are looking for in mezcal, but the way that people who make and sell mezcal are talking about it. And I have this theory that part of what helped this category really just crash into the planet like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 10 years ago was the fact that you could sum it up in exactly 3 words that every American consumer could understand. And those 3 words are tequila, but smoky. Now, is that entirely 100% accurate? Absolutely not. It's 3 words. You can't describe anything entirely 100% accurately in just 3 words. But the fact that that was an entry point, I think, was a really big boon for the category. And I was talking to someone at the Heritage Agave Festival in beautiful, sunny Tucson, Arizona, where I am again this year. I was talking to someone here last year. I don't remember who it was. Actually, that's a lie. I do remember exactly who it was, but I don't think they'd appreciate me outing them on this podcast as having said this. So I'm just going to let them remain anonymous. But they were saying that, yeah, like at first we had to sell mezcal as the smoky cousin of tequila because that's what people understood. They were like, but now that people know what mezcal is, now that it's gotten into the cultural bloodstream, they're like, we're actually having to kind of ratchet that back. Like, it was very useful as an intro tool, but now that we've successfully done the introducing, we're having to kind of try and put that genie back in the bottle. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so, but also we can't get too bogged down with the purest element of talking about the spirit. It is an esoteric spirit. It is a beautifully diverse spirit. And in its moment, when we were trying to educate people, when we wanted more people to know about it, oftentimes I think some of the talks were making it more complicated than it needed to be. Though it is a complex spirit, the goal was to introduce it to more people. But when you're trying to introduce something new to someone, you want to simplify it rather than make it more complex. And then you're making something complex that's already super complex in the first place. So it makes it harder to sell. And so what we did with Ilegal was try to simplify the way to get in front of people. We, as a mezcal brand, can all mezcal brands can share the Mexican history, Mexican culture, the heritage portion of it. We can all share that because it's a Mexican spirit. But if we were only focusing on that and the very, very technical aspect of distillation, then what really sets us apart from everybody else, because at the end of the day, it's plant, it's harvest, then it's cook, mill, and then distill, and then possibly age. It's very, very similar to the other ones out there. So what makes us different is who we are.
Well, I definitely want to talk about that. I want to talk about the process, particularly that last step you mentioned, aging, because Ilegal has a very fun new product out that you and I definitely want to enthuse about. But let's talk a little bit about your history with the Ilegal brand. Now, earlier I said you were literally the face of Ilegal. You're wearing a very lovely hat, but for the people watching on YouTube, would you mind taking the hat off for a second and showing them kind of what I was alluding to there?
Yeah, I have the tattoo there.
Yeah.
I got this tattoo. It says Ilegal. I got this tattoo in Antigua, Guatemala, maybe about 7 years ago, something like that. Maybe 6 years ago. We would oftentimes bring the crew down to where Ilegal was originally produced for, or where the bar, the home of the birthplace of Ilegal. Mm-hmm. And so we would bring people down to Café No Sé, which is in Antigua, Guatemala. And part of the experience was obviously going to Café No Sé. There's live music every day, plenty of mezcal. But one thing a lot of people don't know is there was a tattoo shop next door. And so
I knew that because all of the people with Ilegal tattoos that I saw, I have seen enough 3 rabbits fucking each other tattoos to know instinctively, even though I didn't know for a fact that there was a tattoo shop next door, I knew for a fact that there was a tattoo shop.
Yeah, there had to be, right? Or a barback / tattoo artist. but no,
next door and also in the back, if you know the right people.
And so it was, I forget how many years I was into working with Ilegal, but I've always said Ilegal is the first brand that I've ever worked for, and probably the last brand that I'll ever work for, not because of the industry or anything, but I sunk my teeth into it, and I really, really, really love the brand and its history. And so I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, though my mom wasn't really happy. But I felt good with knowing my hairline is pretty steady, so I'm not worried about that. And I remember walking into the tattoo shop, and we're in Guatemala, and I walk in and I say, I want to get a tattoo on my face, but I don't want you to make me look like a gangster. And then the tattoo artist,
That is a simple yet tough order to fill.
the tattoo artist looks at me and says, "Got it. Okay, yeah, no worries. Go ahead and sit down." And so they lay me on I believe it was like a plastic table, and we, on with pen and paper, wrote down Ilegal in the font that we wanted it. And then later on, we ended up getting that same font and taking it around the country with this Bar Ilegal activation we have, which brings in all of the elements of what we originally were experiencing as core, or original members of the brand, which is live music, tattoos, and mezcal.
We had two of those three when I worked in the spot in the East Village. We had live music every night. We had mezcal, no face tattoos, no tattoos of any kind, actually. But I don't know. Maybe for future activations. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I remember just walking into Café Noce, and John was standing at the bar ordering a mezcal. He was just arriving, and I go, "Look, John," and we put my cell phone flashlight on, and he goes, "You're out of your fucking mind." Beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's a nice face tattoo, I will say. Yeah. John, by the way, is the owner of Ilegal. So.
Founder, owner, yes.
Yeah. Well, and there's an interesting origin story between the two of you. Let's talk the pre-face tattoo days. How did you and John Rexer first link up?
Yeah, so I started bartending at a place called 320 Main, and they were Jason Schiffer trained me and taught me how to make cocktails. The first cocktail I ever learned how to make was a Sazerac, and the old fashioned. And so with no experience and just anxious to learn, John ended up training me and teaching me classic cocktails. I fell in love with gin and bourbon and whiskey and all the original classic cocktail base spirits. But at the same time, I was really culturally involved and locally involved, and did Aztec dance, and was really into like pre-Hispanic culture and early Mexican culture. And I started looking at like the goddesses, like Mayahuel and stuff like that, and I found mezcal. And I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. This is actually me, because I love gin and I love rum and all of the things, but I was like, but this is me. So I hyper-focused on it. I started making cocktails with it and learning about the spirit and how to mix it. I ended up moving to Atlanta, Georgia to open up.
Give us the time frame on this. How in the general knowledge of things is mezcal at this point? Is it starting to creep in or completely unknown?
Completely unknown. This was even before people had the guts to put mezcal in an atomizer to alter their tequila cocktail. This was way before all that. And I was making 1.5 ounce, 2 ounce base spirit cocktails with mezcal. And so I ended up moving to Atlanta and found a bar that was opening. They were opening the first mezcal bar. And when we opened it, we were using a different array of mezcals, whatever we could find, because I don't know, like whatever distributor was selling mezcal probably had like 5 cases. And so we take the 5 cases and then bring in 5 cases of whatever wasn't out of stock. And then we just bounce around like that. I started doing some research on what exactly I wanted to be like the house brand. And I found Ilegal. I loved Ilegal because it was it was a beautiful bottle. The word Ilegal, I love it, and the idea of it. And I started doing some research. I go on the original brand website and I see some of their early stickers, and they were punk rock bands font that said Ilegal Mezcal, and I was like, this is perfect. I was super into punk rock at the time. And I was like, this is perfect, or always was. And I'm like, man, who are these guys? And then I find out, John, when he started the brand, was smuggling it. I was just getting top line stuff, was smuggling it from Oaxaca into his bar in Guatemala to stock his bar. And I was like, man, this is really, really cool. So I start selling it. John ends up coming in for a market visit to check out, who's selling Ilegal in Atlanta. And he sits down at the bar, overhears me talking about the mezcal spirit, or the Mexican spirit, all Mexican spirits, Bacanora, Sotol, even at the time, and mezcal. And he liked it. He liked the way I was talking about it, and introduced himself. And I was like, oh man, this is someone I've been wanting to meet. So we end up going out, show him around, show him a couple of the bars that were serving mezcal. There's not many, 4 or 5 that were serving mezcal. And we had a long night and end up at Waffle House. And yep, as you do when you have a long night.
Where all great business deals go down.
Almost every. Yeah.
Yes. The Declaration of Independence was actually signed at a Waffle House. Fun.
That's true.
It's on the back of the $2 bill. They took a lot of them out of circulation, but like it's think of the last time that you saw one and just really, do you remember what you saw? Exactly. It was a Waffle House. Just take my word for it. Anyway, continue.
With a little bit of hash brown grease.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so we end up becoming fast friends, and he invites me to work for him as a very, 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 very part-time salesperson / brand ambassador in California. And so I was going to move back to California anyway because I missed my family. And it all just kind of aligned. At the time I was working, I ended up picking up a gig managing a bar, and the owner at the time said, you can either manage the bar or you could be a brand ambassador. And I said, thank you so much for the opportunity. Today's my last day. And then going to work for Ilegal, which ended up being a good move in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I God bless the people who can run and manage bars, because I tried to do it and I am not one of those people. The world needs them. Thank you for your service.
The ones who can do it well, we need them.
Yes, exactly. That's true. And and I think we all know there are more bars than there are competent bar managers in the world. But say like economics, they're complicated.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I'm always of economics and Ilegal and all that. I've been really pleased to watch what the brand has done and how it's expanded over the years since I worked for them a little bit. For the listeners that aren't obsessively stalking every detail of my personal life, I worked at the Ilegal pop-up that was attached to Paper Daisy in the East Village right up until March 2020, when we all took 2 weeks off to flatten the curve. And it's been really fun to watch where the brand has gone, what it's done, how it's expanded since then. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is there's a new release out, which is kind of a new thing for you. It's the Caribbean rum cask. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's our reposado, and it's finished for about 2 months in Caribbean cask. It mixes really well, but it's beautiful. I have the bottle here. Some chocolate notes. It's beautiful. I had it in a Manhattan Negroni. It's really, really nice Negroni because of its...
I did try it in a Negroni. It was dope in a Negroni.
Yeah, it's got those chocolate notes that really, really come out with the bitterness. And so we've always known that there was going to be some evolution in what people thought about when it came to mezcal. On a personal note, when I first started working in the mezcal world as a bartender, I was making cocktails, a lot of cocktails with mezcal, because I knew, just as we were talking about earlier, trying to simplify the way that we talk about mezcal, also bringing it to people in an approachable way, like a margarita. Now, you could have a margarita and you pretty much know what it's going to taste like, but the base spirit is going to change it. And so I was making a lot of cocktails to introduce people to mezcal, because I didn't think people were ready to sip on it neat yet when I first started bartending. And so I started seeing a lot of language, a lot of write-ups, a lot of blog posts about you should never mix mezcal. You should never mix it in a cocktail. And
Why do people obsess over telling people how to enjoy the things that they enjoy? That is never, nothing I like is made better by someone scolding me about the wrong way to do it. It consistently, I will never not be mystified by it.
and this was one of those instances where I was reading something written up by someone I really appreciate and respect, and the person was, known for writing the book on mezcal, or one of the first ones. And so I reach out to him on Facebook and say, hey, I'm working at this bar. My family is from Mexico. I love Mexican spirits, and I love mezcal. I have been making mezcal cocktails here, but I read somewhere that you said that we should never mix mezcal in a cocktail. And I would like to know from you if my approach is the wrong one when it comes to getting people to drink it and respecting the spirit. And crickets. I got no answer. And this was before I've ever gone to Oaxaca. And I was curious to know because I wanted to do things the right way. And so I end up booking a flight to go to Oaxaca, and I end up at this person's bar. And I walk in and I said, hey, I sent you a message, but I don't know if you received it. I haven't heard back, but I'd love to get your take on, making mezcal cocktails. He says, wow, Gilbert, I'm really glad you came in. I'm sorry, I was busy and I didn't answer you. Your message made me think about it. And I do believe now that mezcal cocktails could be a really, really good way of introducing the audience abroad to taste mezcal for the first time. It can be really good for the spirit category. In fact, hold on one second. He turns around, he grabs the menu, and on the menu is the cocktail that I was promoting and selling at the bar that I was in charge of, and it was on his menu, and he made me one. And I was like, wow. And so,
Was this, had he known about you? First of all, what was the recipe? Second of all, had he known about yours, or is this, spontaneous generation? Is this just one of those combinations of flavors that just works? And
no,
you
I
both came up with it
posted the
independently?
recipe. No, I posted the recipe on Facebook at the time, and he made it, and he put it on his menu. And so, I think that oftentimes we end up being very dogmatic when it comes to what mezcal should be in our own opinion, but it's such a diverse spirit, and there's so many people with different backgrounds that like different things. And after all, this is an artisanal spirit, and who is one artisan to tell another artisan or artist how to paint a sunset? So I think when we first introduced Ilegal to folks, and we had a reposado, a lot of folks were saying, well, you should never age mezcal.
That raised a lot of eyebrows. I remember that.
Similar to when folks were saying you should never mix mezcal in a cocktail. And I found so many parallels in that. And I also remember going to Oaxaca and seeing it firsthand without any sort of real language barrier, and talking directly to the mezcaleros and asking them, what's your favorite? And most of the time they would come out from this back room with a 3-year-old, with this 3-year aged tobala, or this madre cuiche that's been aged in barrels for however long. And so oftentimes they were giving me a reposado. And so I thought that was really interesting too. And I also know, like, never say never. So some of those people that were saying we would never age ended up putting a couple aged expressions out there, at least to experiment with. So I think that the way that we did it was I try to simplify. It's very similar to tequila. It's joven, reposado, añejo. And so that was another advantage we had.
Well, and this is, you talk about going to Oaxaca and speaking with these mezcaleros and actually getting if someone that you're visiting at their shop, their distillery, their brewery, whatever, and you ask them what's their favorite and they go to the back and get you something, you're in rarefied air at that point. And this is something that it sounds like very near and dear to you because you are a first generation Mexican American. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And so for me, Mezcal is the embodiment of diversity, but also of Mexican culture. And so there's nothing more Mexican to me than, there's a lot of things that are very Mexican, but one of the most Mexican things that I know is that this beautiful agave spirit that is enjoyed in all aspects of life, from baptism all the way to funerals. So it's definitely present in all of our celebration.
And it sounds like this is also kind of it makes it a bit, it's not just business, it's personal, it sounds like this is a thing that really is driving you in a way more than if you were just selling. Well, there's something else that you're selling, which our YouTube viewers have already gotten a sneak preview of that I definitely want to talk about. It's a shame Damon's not here to discuss it with you. That's all I'll say as a teaser for our audio listeners. But if you were selling like, I don't know, microwaves or something, it wouldn't hit you in quite the same way.
Yeah. The passion for what I was doing when I first started, and even now, and even more so now because there's a little bit of pride there too, was being able to introduce a culture that's very near and dear to the masses, and bringing something beautiful like mezcal that I fell in love with on a personal level, and just having this 14-year-long game of show and tell. I really love this. Check it out.
Yeah, and I wanna talk to you about where you think the future of this not just mezcal, but also like you mentioned, like raicilla, bacanora, like all of these other sotol, all of these other adjacent spirits that are just starting to pick up momentum with the American consumer. I want to ask you where you think they're going. One, from just kind of a like, will any of them ever capture the mezcal crown question, because that is something that everyone, as we've discussed a lot on this show, wants to be the next mezcal. But also, as we discussed at the beginning of the show, there's a lot that is going on in our country's, let's say, fraught relationship with our neighbor to the south. I began this show with a chicken bit that, frankly, even as I was doing it, I was like, this isn't going to land. But well, you know what? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Life is about risk. But the trade war is interesting because it feels very, in a lot of ways where people are saying the quiet part out loud, openly hostile to Mexico. But on the other hand, these massive retaliatory tariffs against China really open up a lane for Mexico to kind of be the place to go for a lot of the products that would have been made very cheaply in China are now going to kind of move over to, again, our neighbors to the south. So a lot of gross, disgusting, racist demonization of Mexico in the media, but also a lot of inadvertent economic opportunity being created by the uncertainty and chaos. So solve all of that for me in 30 seconds. I don't know. It's a lot and no one knows where it's going to go, but it seems like there's a surprisingly optimistic outcome for the partnership between the United States and Mexico. And as a result, Mexican spirits being embraced by American consumers. I don't know. What do you think? Oh, can you still hear me?
I'm breaking up. Yeah, it was breaking up for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you catch all that?
I think that cooperation between both countries can be beneficial to both, and I hope that things don't get so muddy where there's even more aggression than there already is. But there is really, really great opportunity. Just as someone who works with artisans in Mexico, I know so many of the beautiful things that are made out there. Like in Puebla, who knew? In Puebla, so much great denim is being produced out there and can be, manufactured and sold here. There's a lot of really good opportunities there. You're correct in that, but I don't know. When it comes to this, I'm probably a little bit more, let's see what happens, and I'm not going to panic until some real decisions are made. I find that more beneficial than to try to guess what's going to happen next, because then I'd constantly be stressed out and I have more gray hair than I already do.
Well, you got a nice tattoo to balance it out, so there's that.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And I want to dig down on what you said about Puebla, because, my agave nectar that I'm here in Tucson trying to, promote and spread around and spread awareness and love of. By the way, I checked 100 pounds of agave nectar in my luggage from New York to Tucson, and I arrived here in Arizona with no less than 3 "your bag has been inspected for suspicious activity" notices from the TSA, but it all arrived. So I guess it all passed muster. And I'm very excited about it, but my agave nectar comes from Hidalgo. And when I was there last, the person who started as my translator, and I think at this point we're IRL friends. We've crossed the blood-brain barrier into being like actual, from work acquaintances into being buddies.
Yeah.
But she mentioned, wow, I'd never really thought that there was much of anything to look at or be excited about in Hidalgo. And after this trip, I've realized that there's genuinely some really cool stuff out here. And it shows me that there's still so much from Mexico left to be discovered by people, at least. And by people here, I'm talking about, the consumer at large, the general collective consciousness. I don't know. Is that kind of your sense of it as well?
Yeah. I know on a personal level, folks who immigrated to the United States at a very young age, who think back and look back at what they left and what their impression of Mexico was versus what I've seen very recently and how it looks and the things that we have to offer out there. It's just far different from what people remember. And for those who haven't traveled to Mexico, the best thing that I would recommend is, yes, travel, visit, get to know Mexico, because it's like most of my experiences, even traveling within this country. I went to North Carolina, and I didn't know how cool it was and how beautiful it is and how beautiful the architecture is, and some really, really great bars out there. So we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. You don't know what you don't know. And I want to, are you broken up again?
I'm fine, but I think so. I think I'm fine, but yeah, it's going back and forth. But Wi-Fi connection seems to be the same and strong.
Okay. Follow-up question. The people in the room next to me are having some very athletic sex right now. Is that picking up on my microphone? Can you hear that?
I heard something. I was just assuming that was the other internet browser over there, but
oh yeah, no, that's my neighbors here at the Red Lion Inn.
Good.
Okay, well, Armin, have fun trying to scrub that from the record, buddy.
Be fine. Yeah, or enhance it.
Yeah, exactly. I know that's the magic of live radio, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, where were we? I guess from here, I was just going to transition into ending on your hat business, if that works for you. Also, yeah. I know with the technical difficulties and everything, we're a little over. Are you good to answer one or two more questions?
Yeah. I got no rush.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, and speaking of interesting products, let's talk about the thing we teased earlier. You got a lot of hats behind you there, buddy. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, so currently I'm here in Chinatown, just outside of downtown LA, right next to the Dodger Stadium. We just opened up our hat shop here in Los Angeles. I've alongside, or when I first went to Oaxaca with Ilegal, I purchased a hat at the Mercado 20 de Noviembre. And I always loved wearing hats, even before I went to Oaxaca, obviously. But when I went to Oaxaca, I was like, wow, this is really special. I'm going to buy a hat from out here and kind of just take it on the road with me. And I loved it and wore it. And after all, we needed to get some sort of shade when we're going out to the agave fields, as you know. And I started wearing more and more hats and traveling more and more to Oaxaca. One day, I go into this small mercado and go to this little hat stand and meet the hat maker who was making a lot of the hats that I was buying. And we became fast friends, and he's invited me to see his operation. And I was like, sure, yeah, let's go look at it. And he brings me up this spiral staircase, rickety spiral staircase up onto the roof, aluminum siding, open air, sort of like garage type of place with a bunch of really old tools, a bunch of really old metal and wooden tools. And outside of my life with Ilegal, I like to tinker and I like to, do some woodworking badly, but I like to do it. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I love hats and I wear hats all the time. So this is really, really cool. Let me see if I could do this at home. I talked to the hat maker, and I convinced him to sell me some of his old hats that he no longer wanted. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll sell them to you. They're garbage, but I mean, if you want them, I'll give them to you at a really low price. And so I take those home to my apartment in New York and start cutting them up, taking them apart, putting them back together, shaping them and unshaping them, and just really working, like deconstructing them and figuring out how these are made up. And then I wanted to learn how to make them from scratch. So I started going to the University of YouTube and learning how to make hats from scratch. At the time, I was known on social media for making cocktails and mezcal cocktails and promoting Ilegal. And I decided to put up a tripod and start showing people what I was doing in my garage on my time off. And started showing the behind the scenes process of me making myself a hat. And I made myself a couple hats, and friends started asking me to make them hats. I'm sure I'd make them a hat. And one day on the DMs slides in none other but Madonna's personal stylist and says, I would like 6 hats by tomorrow, please, for Madonna's Madame X
6
show.
hats by tomorrow. Were they all for Madonna or were they for her entourage?
And dancers for her show, for the Madame X show. And I'm like, sure, yeah, I can do it. Because I remember like seeing some like Rick Rubin interview of him saying like they hit him up for a recording that was over a couple hours away and they needed him there in 20 minutes. And he said, yeah, let's do it. I'll be right there. And just figured I'd figure it out later. So I said yes to the opportunity, and then I figured it out later. And so we did that, and I started realizing like this is an actual thing. This is something that can be, its own standalone brand. And so in our small apartment, we moved and started making hats in a garage in California. And then from there, we ended up opening our first place. And so this is our latest retail spot. The brand is called Marquez Clásico. And when we first started focused on like this distressed, like almost bohemian style hats that seemed to be in in style, but then really honed our craft and now making beautiful, clean cowboy hats and even charro hats like sombreros de charro. But still an extension of my passion for Mexican culture. That's essentially what it is.
So first of all, I love that, and congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a particular act of both bravery and insanity to strike out and start your own business.
Mostly
So
insanity.
congratulations and my sympathies rolled up into one.
Yes.
I wish Damon was here because, as everyone knows, Damon is a hat guy.
Mm.
I am not a hat guy. I am under the I have never found a hat that does not make my head look and feel like a beach ball. But you're looking at me right now, granted in 2 dimensions. But do you think, is there a particular hat that you think would work on me?
Yeah, and particularly right now, the cowboy hat seems to be really, really in fashion. And what I would say is, for all different head types, it's probably the most forgiving and easiest to combine with any type of clothes, whether it's shorts. I've seen like people wear cowboy hats with full-on streetwear to a beautiful linen suit. So for me, it's the most diverse hat. But then it would be what you're comfortable with. Obviously, if you're not used to wearing one, you're putting something strange on your head. It's like putting on a helmet, like a hard hat for the first time. You kind of like, it's there. And then eventually, after wearing it for a while and you get plenty of compliments, you start digging it and you lean into it and you just don't even feel it anymore. Probably like a face tattoo.
Well, you've also, your face tattoo is being that it's on your temple, you have a very strategic thing where you're either wearing a face tattoo or a hat, but never both. It is never, and I'm sorry about this. Actually, I'm really not. It's never a hat on a hat, which is very nice.
Yes. Yeah. And so I would say that one thing to notice is how broad your shoulders are and how wide you want the brim. And then if your face is rounder or longer, you then will choose the size of the crown. But if you want to avoid all of that over complicating it, I would say this cattleman crease here that is often what you see on a traditional cowboy hat is the most diverse hat and probably fits well on most anyone. I've seen rappers wearing them, country music. It's everything.
Okay. Next time I'm in LA, I'll have to check out. And
Yes,
I'm looking forward to you proving me wrong that I'm not a hat guy.
Yes. Yeah. We've gotten a lot of people who want to, buy a hat. They want a hat. They like the idea of it, but they're not fully convinced that they are a hat person. And then I see them years later and they have a full-on collection that they've bought maybe 6 hats from us, and they send me pictures of their wall, and they have a wall that's similar to this in their little area. So
that's literally how I got into cocktail bartending. Like I was a beer guy originally, and I got one cocktail recipe book and picked up the necessary 3 bottles to make that drink. And then I found another recipe and I was like, oh, great. I already have 3 of the 4 bottles. I need to make this. And then I made it and it was good. And then I found another recipe and I was like, oh, great. I already have 4 of the 5 bottles. I need to make this. And now 12 years later, I guess it's my job.
Yeah. Like I have Sprite. I have cherry juice.
I'm ready. I'm ready to make the most kick-ass Shirley Temple the world has ever seen.
Yeah, the old fashions and the bitters and the same for me. I just got the Angostura bitters and some whiskey, and I was ready to make a lot of classic cocktails. It's good. Yeah. It's it could be an addiction, I'm sure.
Yeah, you never know what trifling fancy is going to turn into a hobby, is going to turn into an addiction, is going to turn into a career. So there you go.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Gilbert, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Always great to catch up with you, man. And congratulations on everything you and Ilegal are doing. It's good stuff. Happy to hear all about it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to tell a little bit of our story and who we are and what I'm doing. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Always
a pleasure, man. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. But if you want to hear plenty more great programs just like this one, be sure to tune into HRN. And if you want to hear more of this great program, just like this one, you can become a regular on our Patreon page. There you're going to get bonus episodes. You're going to get cocktail recipes from all of our guests. You are going to get a free cocktail kit from our friends at Shaker and Spoon. And if you want to see all of the hats that Gilbert and I were talking about today, you can go over and check out our YouTube page. That is free because we decided to stop paywalling our beautiful, beautiful faces. So links for both of those are going to be in the show notes. And also want to put in a shameless plug for April the 22nd. I am going to be doing another installment of my ongoing series where I dress up in a sparkly priest outfit and get strangers to embarrass themselves. After Dark Confessions is happening at Someday Bar, Tuesday, April 22nd, 7:30 p.m. And I want to just add something interesting and something kind of beautiful about this event that I didn't even really realize until someone called my attention to it recently, which is that, you know, a lot of people have been asking me, hey, are you going to make this event into a podcast? Are you going to put the videos up somewhere? Where can I see this if I can't make it? And the thing I like about this event is that you can't see it if you don't make it. We're asking people to write down some of the most embarrassing and honestly frequently illegal things that they have done and then cop to it in public. This is my solemn vow to everyone who comes out. There will never be a podcast. There will never be a YouTube channel. There will never be video. It stays between us and the other strangers in the congregant. And in a world where everything gets logged online, whether it's interesting or not, I think it's kind of beautiful to do a show like that that disappears into the ether. So if you want to see it, the one and only time it's ever going to happen, April 22nd, 7 p.m., Someday Bar. And be sure to tune in next week when we are going to have Colin Azare Apia on, also known as Get Involved Bruv. Love that guy. Always exciting to catch up with him. But for now, that is going to do it us. That is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. Until next time, cheers, everybody.